Hey, welcome back to Spicy Tanking. Today we're going to take our character, our tank, and look at some resources to try and see if we can improve what we've been doing. We've been leveling up to 70 recently and recently hit 70. Our item level is at 370. Our talent tree is basically, we just kind of wing it. We didn't look online to see what is good, what's better. So I think we want to take the time for this video to go through our talent tree and other things to see how can we improve our character to be more optimized. And I think there's a lot of reasons to do some research to try and improve your character. The amount of information and playtime that people have had in the game, there's a ton of information online. So taking advantage of that information helps you sort of play the game better. You don't have to by any means, but I think if you want to reach higher echelons of gameplay or become a better player, I think it's worth looking online and seeing what other people are doing. By no means necessary, but a great way to kind of help get you started and get more comfortable with your class. I think what we want to do today is look at our character in terms of both talents, gear, and possibly seeing what other information is available to try and help us improve our gameplay. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to our browser, and we're going to look at a few different websites. This first one is Icy Veins. This one's pretty inclusive. It's been around for a long time. For our purposes, we'd want to look at the WoW information. We might want to look at classes, let's say protection tank here. And I think these ones are all, done by different authors, so there's a lot of good information here. I will say, I feel like in the community, it doesn't feel like Icy Veins isn't what it used to be. And it tends to sort of not hold as much weight in the past. So it's some nice information. It does go through a lot of different things here. But a site that's very similar and I think is more well regarded is wowhead.com. If we go to our classes here, we can go to protection and we'll see it has a lot of the same information. We have rotations, abilities, talents, stats, consumables, that sort of thing. It's all pretty similar. And I believe they always tell you who it's written by. In this case, on Icy Veins is Mahi. And then here on Wowhead, it's done by Larold, I suppose. It's a nice resource, and I think for me, going to Wowhead is a great first place to start. I think one of the first things I like to do, and looking at sort of the talent tree, what do they have versus what do we have? The nice thing about Dragonflight is you can just copy talents from a website and then paste it into your game. So we'll probably do that later in this video. The next one here looking at is Raider.io. This is, I think, a must for anyone trying to get into higher keys in terms of Mythic Plus or doing raids. This is also a great resource just to kind of understand like statistics or understanding what's out there. When we chose our realm, we kind of use this as a resource to understand what does the realm breakdown look like. You get a sense of like the time zone and populations and what servers are really big. But Mythic Plus, it also helps you understand what classes are pretty popular. You can go here to this level range view and maybe let's just say like 15 and up, and you can kind of get a sense of the class spread, see what people are playing. You see very few survival hunters, for example, but you see a pretty equal amount of the other two. And it gives you a sense of what's popular. If you're really going crazy and going to 20 plus, you'll see a really different distribution of classes then too. And it's cool just to give you a sense of like what might be common to play and group up with. A great resource to help also check characters. You can also look people up by searching their names. We haven't done any mythics yet on our characters, so there's no information available. But a great way to kind of see like what are people doing. The other sites that I want to look at are Warcraft logs. This is always a really great resource, I think, just because of the amount of sheer data available. If you want to look at the damage meters or to kind of get a range of how damage is doing in Dragonflight, this is a great way to see how you might stack up or how they might compare. So for example, let's say if we want to look at heroic DPS, and maybe we want to look at like the 50th percentile, and maybe specific item range, let's say like 376 the low end, you kind of see what stands out. So here we might say like, oh, survival hunter is doing really great in heroic 50th percentile in this item range. So, and it all really depends too. Like there's so many different statistics and variables here that understanding what kind of goes into this helps you kind of get more out of it. So that's more for the DPS side. I think Warcraft logs is really great for damage as well as healing, but I haven't personally really used it a lot for tanking, so I'm not as familiar with how I might look at it for tanking. You could, of course, look at different rankings for each of the bosses and maybe get a sense of that. That way, you can kind of click into someone and maybe just look at what their tanks are doing. Let's see, damage taken maybe. Here in this case, there's a prot tank named Gaggle. You can kind of get a sense of what abilities they're using. Burning Wound. I'm not sure if we have that. I think we might. But it lets you see like what they're up to. I think the one that's really stood out recently for both Mythic Plus and rating is this site, subcreation.net. You can choose between the three here. I don't really PvP as much, so I've only focused on these first two. But let's say for Mythic Plus, we want to look at sort of our tier lists here. And this gives you a good idea or indication of like what might be popular or might be successful in each of these instances. So like, for example, tanking, both Prot Paladins and Prot Warriors seem to be pretty good. There's kind of a breakdown here as well as the DPS and whatnot. And it's cool because this does sort of get updated per week based on what sort of affixes we have. But the nice thing here is you can also look at very specific, more detailed information. So we're going to use this primarily for today, but if you go to your tanks here and you click Prot Warrior, it gives you a ton of information here, sort of like a top navigation here. And I think the first thing we want to do is look at the full tree of talent builds. What I'm looking at here is the overall sort of breakdown in percentages. We see that these first two both have a really high percentage of the overall number of builds available. So let's try looking at the first one. I think we can do more detailed research to see what's really different between these two. But for now, I think we'll just choose one. And actually, you know what? I think we're going to go to the Vault version here because we want to get into some LFR before the reset. So for here in LFR, or for raids rather, see that it's a different breakdown. You don't have that same 5% each, but more of a 3.4% here. So we're going to go and just copy that. And copy, okay. Let's hop back over to WoW. And we're going to go open our talent tree. And we're going to import, or paste in that code. And I'm just going to do like sub C, let's call it 32023. And it automatically do its thing. So you can see what's changing in here. And there's going to be a lot of changes, it looks like. And so we've got some new abilities, Bellowing Roar, Thunderous Roar, as well as Ravager. Oh, that's cool. These are two we used to have, but got rid of. But it's cool to see that they're actually playable, that they're good. So we'll kind of mess with our buttons around here a bit. But it's nice to now see that, our talent tree has changed quite a bit. We've gotten new abilities. So it will be a good idea to go through here and look through your talents to kind of understand, okay, what build do we have now? What are some key abilities that are in there? What are using the other sites too? Like going back to Chrome, if we look at the different sites, let's say like for Warcraft logs, this person's using a lot of Burning Wound. I'm not sure what that is, but they have Incinerating Roar, which we just picked up. It's good to see that that makes sense. And this is a really short fight. It looks like it's less than 2 minutes, but it gives you an idea of what abilities they are using. And this looks, I don't know, it's so weird. It looks like a fire mage or something. So yeah, I feel like we're pretty happy now with our warrior talent tree setup. So we're going to go back to sub creation here. So now the other things we want to look at are the sort of what's new to Dragonflight are these crafted items, things we use a spark for. So not surprisingly, we see an elemental lariat. The lariat has been really awesome for a lot of classes. Might be best in slot for almost every class, possibly. And then we also see a belt. This is interesting. This one says, your spells and abilities have a chance to inflict a lingering frost spark, doing damage over time, and slows enemies. Okay, cool. So we can craft both of these, and you can see that, the percentage of players here, it's pretty significant. There's a large amount of people using both of these. And you do see some people use this one as well. Looks like a wrist, but that is pretty cool. Get some versatility. So we'll definitely go back into the game and create our own lariat. I think that's going to be our next step. Gives you a breakdown of gems to see what sort of gems would make sense for your character. Here we see haste and versatility. If we go back to our wowhead, we can maybe go back here and look at stats. So what stats are really key here? And so you have this sort of breakdown of what stats are important, and haste is really key. It reduces the global cooldown, which increases rage generation. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. So that's really our number one stat. And I think verse being second makes sense because it's just a passive damage reduction. So really, haste and verse are the big key ones. And that lines up really nicely with sub creation. We see that haste and verse are both our top gem stats here. And we see the illimited diamond being primary stat plus haste. So when we craft our lariat, we'll definitely grab these kinds of gems here. Then you can kind of see, what other items are people using, the tier gear. What's nice here is also seeing which enchantments make sense. And I really like that it's always broken down by overall percentage of the population to get a sense of, most people use waking stats in their chest, but, some people say sustained strength might be better. And I think the more you become familiar with your class, the better you'll be able to understand the difference between these and understanding the subtle nuances between why you'd prefer one or the other. For our purposes, we're pretty new to the class. I think we'll just always pick the top one for now, and that'll probably serve us just fine. So we'll definitely start enchanting some of our gear as well once we kind of get some more stuff. 370, I think, is a great time to enchant. Weapon enchants are pretty expensive. As of now, Sophic Devotion's probably a few thousand gold, but you absolutely can just go with something cheaper for the time being until you get something that's actually, a solid weapon. But by no means, you have to max out everything out. You can just start with the basics. Every small thing really helps for sure. And then it kind of goes into showing you what's the best sort of maybe commonly used items in each slot. It gives you a lot more detail. So yeah, I think that's really cool, and we'll definitely go back to our character here and look at improving sort of our class and specs. Right now I don't know if we've really optimized for haste. You have some, which is good. But yeah, now with this, the new talents, we'll definitely do a little bit more research to see what's going on there. And then from there, we'll go ahead and queue for some LFR. And hopefully we can do okay there. But hopefully this was helpful, and this was just a quick way to get us started. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks.